sorry. Alright guys, we are going to watch an ObsidianAnt video. And this one here is about Microsoft Simulator, which is a really cool stuff here, really cool video where he compares Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024, which is coming out in November, and the old one that came out in 2020. So it's definitely a game I will be playing. It has a career mode. It's going to be so much more immersive than anything we've seen before, and I'm really looking forward to trying it out. I'll probably play with my son.
So here's a comparison between the graphics and visuals of Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024 and MSFS 2020, the two editions of the game essentially side by side.
Oh,
now,
wow.
full disclosure here for clarity, just so...
What? Oh my gosh, the same location. Look at that. This is like you're in an FPS game, you know? This I know that when you were playing the Microsoft Simulator 2020, you were going too close to the ground. It looks very pixelized because it was not supposed to be seen from that close, but look at the difference. What have they done? What?
So everyone understands the context, I didn't attend the recent Microsoft preview event for this game. I was unable to go there, even though I was invited. The footage on screen here is based on screenshots that Microsoft sent over to me, and I've put them together so we can compare the two versions of the game side by side. Now, it seems that Microsoft have taken these photos from...
I mean, it looked even great in the first game. It's even so much better after. Wow.
From the two different versions of the sim in exactly the same locations. The locations, for the most part, are listed on the screen. I've done that by taking that from the available information, although not all the screenshots contained the relevant location. So overall then, we can see that there is a dramatic step up in...
Especially all those details here, that grass there, because you're going to be able to leave your plane, walk around in Microsoft Flight Simulator 24. You're going to be able to go to a little mountain maybe, land your plane, walk around, explore, go back to your plane. I wish that we could drive cars also. That would be so nice.
In terms of the visuals between the two different versions of the sim. And this makes a lot of sense. After all, the new version has the ability to get out of your plane.
Right,
and walk around.
exactly.
That means that all of the areas, or many of the areas in the sim, are going to need to be very high.
Oh yeah, Corsica. Yeah, I went to a couple of these places, right? And, you know, it looked great from above, but you can see those bushes here that don't look very convincing. Look at how Corsica looks like.
Detailed when you're close
Those
to the ground.
the flora
so
is
Microsoft used
exactly
a number of
how. Oh
techniques
my
to
gosh.
achieve this. Primarily, so far at least, they've discussed 3D tessellation, which is deforming and using additional triangles on surfaces and objects, and they've used this to great effect on the ground to provide extra detail and extra variation.
This is fantastic.
The ground surfaces themselves are also procedurally generated in terms of the objects that are on them, and that includes the grass, the flowers, rocks and...
Yeah, but that's okay, right? Because these are all going to be the same. Nobody's really paying attention to each and every single piece of weed that you're seeing on the ground, right?
trees and many other such things. Another thing you'll notice as we work through these screenshots is the improvement to lighting.
Oh,
So the
yeah.
new version of the sim has...
And look at especially the water. The water looked great in 2020. 24 is just taking it to a whole new level, man.
a new lighting system. This affects just about everything from all the objects that are illuminated to the world environment itself. Now I'm also going to stick on this particular screenshot.
Yeah, look at that. We can see the details of the little rocks here on the side. Here, you know, that beach here looked very rough, but that's really not the case here in the new game.
For a while, because there's something I really want you to notice, and that is the clouds. Now Microsoft have said that the clouds have been improved vastly in Flight Sim 2024. Look at how the clouds orientate themselves around Mount Fuji here.
Oh, wow, yeah. I mean, the clouds were already very impressive in 2020, right? Getting into volumetric clouds like that was already a very impressive achievement that Asobo Studio did for Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024, but they're really taking this to another level.
Lovely stuff. There's also going to be new cloud layers such as cirrus cloud, so that's going to be very nice to see as well. Here's another look at, just the improvement in the ground.
Yeah, even the little, it's like a track, right? Or like a dirt road. Man, I'm sure there's going to be mods where people will try to go by car, just like they tried to do that, just like they were trying to go by car from place to another. I remember in the first game in Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020, I was trying to drive from Versailles to Paris by car, and I almost did it, but it was just like almost impossible. But this is something that they're going to be trying to do as well here.
To itself, we can see how this is really going to help when you're walking around on the ground surfaces. Talking of which, many of the screenshots are low down to the ground, but here's a few with some altitude. The Grand Canyon itself is a particularly interesting example. Now I'm going to stay on this screenshot for a little bit longer.
So
one thing that's happened
photorealistic
here is that the digital elevation maps, the digital data used for the Grand
It's
Canyon,
a bit lower.
has, as far as I understand it at least, been changed to a resolution of 50 centimeters. This is an absolutely massive deal because obviously, well, the results speak for themselves. Just look at the quality here. You can also notice some of the new
like you could cheat and pretend you are actually there. This looks like so real. This is insane.
cloud layers up on the top left-hand corner of these screenshots. Looks really, really nice, doesn't it? Now, another thing that I'm sure plenty of you will be pleased to know, and some of you may have some concerns about due to the sheer graphical processing power that's going to be required for this, and more on that subject in a bit, is that this version of the sim is going to have ray tracing. So that's something that people have wanted for a very long time, but
the first one didn't have ray tracing? Oh, I didn't know that.
Finally, it is going to happen, although it turns out in a different version.
The Aurora.
Sim.
Oh, nice.
Now, something I really like in these last few screenshots is the level of realism. So in addition to simply having a lot more detail, the grass in these areas just feels...
It looks so much better. The trees look better, right? They've got the animals doing their stuff. The animals are not going to be in 2D.
feels so much more natural. The same is so for the beaches here, the water as well, but also...
Oh, yeah. Oh, I remember. I went to the Seychelles, and I went to New Caledonia. I went to Tahiti in the first game in 2020. And just like really disappointed. It didn't look so great, right? It looked very, very grainy, very low textures. I'm like, yeah, this looks better on the ground, but when you land, it's not that great. And now this is how it's going to be looking like when you go to these places.
So the fact that the trees are correctly situated. You're not getting random trees in random locations,
yes,
but you're now getting the correct type of trees in the correct world regions. So there we have it. A bit of a comparison between the graphics that we've got so far over Flight Sim 2020 and 2024. Unfortunately, no actual live footage to compare side by side yet, but I think this gives us some indication of what we can expect and roughly where we can hope to see some of the improvements, or where we know we're going to see some of the improvements. Now, talking of the game's performance, well, this is obviously going to be very, very demanding. Recently, Microsoft have released the system requirements for this. I'm sure many of you will have already seen that, but I'm going to recap on that particular topic in this video because it is relevant to the overall subject.
I think my PC is not going to be able to handle it. And I got a decent PC, but when I see that, I'm not going to play in Ultra for sure.
I also want to go over that for those of you who haven't had the chance to see this yet. So, we got 3 separate systems.
Okay, alright, so let's see. I've got a RTX 370. So, I'm going to be between recommended and ideal. Okay, I have that. CPU... I have this here. So recommended CPU, GPU better, VRAM I have 32. Oh, that's the video RAM. Okay, video RAM, no, I've got 8. Okay, but I'm at 32 here. I need 64 for ideal, right? Ooh, at least it's not minimum, right? Yeah, this is... Wow. So yeah, my second PC has a 270, so my son will be able to play, but he'll probably play in mean. Oh wow. Yeah, that is going to be quite demanding. I'm going to need a new PC.
Occasions here. Minimum spec, recommended spec, and ideal spec. The thing that really stands out for me here is the graphics cards, and then the the RAM usage. So for minimum spec, they're asking for 16 gigabytes. Recommended spec is 32 gigabytes, and then we have the big one here. The ideal spec for Flight Sim 2024 is
insane.
64 gigabytes of RAM. So yeah, this one has certainly drawn the attention of quite a few people, because 64 gigabytes is certainly a lot of RAM, and I don't think that amount of people out there with gaming rigs will have this amount of RAM. In fact, if we take a look at Steam's hardware survey as of August 2024, we can get some pretty precise results. They say that just 3% of people, a little over 3.25% of people, have 64 gigs.
Yeah, right. Seems like now the norm is between 16 and 32 with a little bit of 20. That's the Steam Deck. No, that's the ROG Ally, so it has 24.
Of RAM, with a third of a percent of people having more than 64 gigs of RAM. Meanwhile, around about 47% of people have 16 gigs of RAM, with 30% of people having 32 gigs of RAM. And I'm glad to see that Microsoft are supporting both 16 gigs here and 32 gigs, but that they're also pushing it all the way up to 64 for those who have the hardware.
That's good.
After all, Flight Sim has always been about pushing the limits.
That's the way it should be. That's how it's always been in the past, and there are very few games actually that push the limits. And it's good because these are those pioneer games that push the limit, that eventually, over time, make way to games that just look better, have more functions, more features, and overall offer us a groundbreaking experience, right? Which I believe is what this flight simulator is going to do.
Now, in terms of graphics cards, on the minimum spec, we've got a GTX 970. That's a pretty old graphics card at this point. Recommended specs is an RTX 2080, and the ideal specs is an RTX 4080. Finally, the other bit of information here, which is certainly going to be somewhat restrictive for a number of people out there, is the bandwidth requirements. Keep in mind that this is always an online game. You won't be able to play it offline. In fact, the install size of the sim, I do believe, is around about 30 gigabytes, which is massively reduced.
This says 50 here.
Down from the original version, the 2020 version. But that said, this is because so much of the client, so much of the data is going to be stored online. And yes, that means you're going to need a lot of bandwidth. So minimum specs is 10 megabits per second. Recommended is 50, and the ideal spec is 100 megabits per second.
I suppose if you have 100, like I have 200 megabits per second in Taiwan. Lucky me, I know. But I think that this is what's going to probably be bringing all the additional details that you're going to be seeing on your screen, right? The better the internet is, the more you're going to be seeing on screen, and the smoother it's going to be. It's probably going to be the most important part.
So there we have it, a comparison of some of the graphics between Flight Sim 2024 and the 2020 edition, as well as a look at the system specs. Let me know your thoughts and feelings on all of this in the video description or in the video comment.
That is awesome. Again, thank you so much to ObsidianAnt for giving us that comparison here. We'll definitely be checking this out when it comes out. Thank you so much for watching, guys. I'll see you in the next one.